You are not free. This is the ultimate, brutal, and essential truth that no motivational speaker dares to tell you. The greater your inner freedom, the more society will fundamentally resent, fear, and actively punish you for it. You may dedicate your life to achieving financial independence. You may successfully buy a secluded home in the mountains, and you may technically eliminate all external visible limitations. But in that very moment, the moment you cease being predictable, the moment you step out of the collective anxiety cycle, and the moment you begin to act from a place of genuine, unassailable inner peace, you do not become a hero. You become an immediate, visible threat to the entire surrounding social order. Alan Watts explained that the foundation of society is not purely built upon a contract of mutual support, but upon a hidden, unspoken contract of mutual anxiety and shared suffering. The vast majority of people are living in a state of quiet, unexamined, chronic frustration. Their subconscious mind comforts itself with a destructive logic. I am suffering, but this suffering is normal and necessary because everyone else is suffering too. This is simply life as it is meant to be. When you, as an individual, achieve a state of genuine, unattached, spontaneous inner peace, you commit an act of profound psychological aggression against this contract. Your visible calm, your effortless spontaneity, and your deep joy, which requires no external validation, expose the lie that the others are clinging to. You demonstrate, through your very existence, that an exit from the shared misery is possible. This realization is intolerable, and it instantly shatters the self-justification for their own fear and anxiety. Your peace is an unbearable accusation against their shared suffering. Your freedom is a quiet mirror, showing them the reality of their own voluntary servitude. This is why the collective will immediately begin to punish you. Their criticism is not a reflection of a mistake or flaw in your character. It is a defensive reflex aimed entirely at forcing you back into the orbit of general anxiety, so that their own suffering can once again be comfortably labeled as normal. Into this conflict is built the rule of exclusion. By choosing your true, authentic, spontaneous self over the rigid social role, you forfeit the automatic right to approval, mass validation, and predictable social support. Your personal pursuit of a rich, unburdened life is constantly undermined by the paralyzing fear of social exile, the deeply ingrained terror of being judged, labeled selfish, and ultimately abandoned by the very system that raised you. This internal conflict demands a choice. You must choose your judge. The anxious external critic, the crowd, or the quiet, uncompromising voice of your own internal judge, conscience. The true, unshakable motivation requires that you confront this fear and accept the necessary cost of your own magnificent uniqueness. You cannot have both absolute freedom and unconditional collective approval. You must accept the risk of becoming the social anomaly as the necessary side effect of becoming your authentic self. The profound, ceaseless conflict between your internal need for genuine, spontaneous freedom and the collective's anxious demand for conformity is maintained by a powerful, often invisible sociological force, the social contract of misery. Watts argued that when the majority of individuals are living lives defined by quiet, unexamined anxiety, their greatest shared existential fear is that someone else might discover authentic, stable peace. If one individual achieves genuine, unattached inner freedom, if they manage to consistently act spontaneously and joyfully without needing external validation, they expose the collective suffering of the others as optional and self-imposed. This sudden, sharp exposure is psychologically intolerable to the group. The collective response is the immediate activation of the mechanism of punishment. Society, or the collective unconscious, does not use overt physical force. Instead, it employs subtle, corrosive sociological tools to enforce your swift return to the anxious fold. 1. Gossip and ostracization, labeling. The group will systematically take your detachment and label it as arrogance, your inner peace as indifference, and your necessary independence as selfishness. The sole psychological goal is to make the social cost of your perceived freedom so intensely unbearable that you voluntarily retreat. 2. The weapon of guilt, internalizing the judge. Your own mind, conditioned by years of social training and collective demands, becomes the first and most effective punisher. It utilizes guilt, the internal voice whispering, "You should be helping them," or "You should care more about what they think," to force you back into emotional and social roles that fundamentally do not serve your soul. True motivation, therefore, requires a radical, clean separation of internal worth from external validation. You must understand that when the collective begins to criticize your peace or your unique trajectory, it is not a judgment on your character. It is a clear, definitive philosophical sign that you are finally free. Their collective resentment is empirical proof that your internal compass is correctly calibrated and pointing decisively away from the misery of the collective. The central tragedy of sacrificing your freedom for this fleeting social acceptance lies in the profound, often irreversible cost of conformity. The toxic motivation, the drive to please the collective, forces you to trade your authentic, spontaneous self for a rigid, predictable social role. Watts explained that society views you not as a unique, flowing being, but as a defined, controllable function, the reliable employee, the perfect spouse, the responsible citizen. This role is your mask, and you are terrified of taking it off because you believe that behind the mask there is nothing left. The moment you cling desperately to this external role, you become structurally incapable of genuine, spontaneous freedom. The necessary path to freedom requires a radical psychological divorce from your socially prescribed role. You must understand that the you the world defines, the function, the title, the reputation, is not the truth of who you are. The truth of who you are is the unburdened, spontaneous capacity for pure experience that exists before the labels are applied. The moment you accept the inevitable criticism that comes from this divorce, you reclaim your internal sovereignty. The choice for genuine, spontaneous individuality is the choice to embrace the ultimate, non-negotiable cost, the necessity of psychological solitude. You must permanently discard the illusion that true, authentic freedom can ever be achieved while maintaining continuous, unanimous, and unconditional approval from the collective. It cannot. The very moment you cease conforming to the social contract of misery, as discussed in Block 2, the crowd will feel a profound existential threat and will immediately attempt to fill the void of your departure with judgment and piercing criticism. Watts teaches us that we are, in our deepest awareness, fundamentally alone. Your unique, unrepeatable experience of the universe is inherently private. The motivated individual accepts this solitude not as a devastating punishment or a sign of failure, but as a sacred necessity, the only structural condition under which true self-knowledge is possible. This solitude is the only space where you can clearly hear the quiet, authentic voice of your true self, unpolluted by the noisy, anxious demands of the external social role you once played. The external judge, the chorus of critics, the social media comments, the collective anxieties of the crowd is merely a loud, anxiety-ridden projection of your own internalized fear. Your task in achieving self-mastery is to surgically shift the entire center of validation entirely inward, systematically replacing the loud, anxious external judge with the quiet, uncompromising internal judge, or conscience. This internal judge operates on a completely different metric than society. It does not measure your inherent worth by your material success, your fleeting popularity, or your social title. It measures your worth solely by your integrity, your unwavering commitment to acting spontaneously, truthfully, and authentically in the present moment. When you finally align your daily actions with the truth of your internal conscience, the judgment of the external world becomes, quite literally, just irrelevant noise. You become structurally immune to the social punishment you once desperately feared. This psychological divorce, this acceptance of solitude, is the core of true, unshakable, and self-sustaining motivation. The motivated life is one lived without apology, driven by an internal current that is too powerful to be stopped by the anxiety of the crowd. This external power is the result of a massive internal energy shift. The motivated individual channels all energy away from psychological defense and entirely toward creation. The individual trapped in the social role, the conformist, is structurally inefficient. Before taking any action, they must perform 3 exhausting, energy-draining calculations. 1. The social cost. Will this action risk my reputation? 2. The ego cost. Will this action risk my self-image as the good or successful person? 3. The predictability cost. Does this conform to my established role? This constant internal negotiation, this filter of fear, paralyzes spontaneity and guarantees mediocre results. The conformist is always acting at 50% capacity. The truly free individual, having embraced solitude and internalized the judge, is instantly released from these 3 costs. Their actions are driven by pure, uncalculated necessity, by the spontaneous flow of Wu Wei. They act without the paralyzing delay of the inner committee. This is the ineffable power of the unburdened act. When the world observes your effortless flow, they call it genius or luck. But it is simply the mind at rest, allowing the universe to act through it without the interference of fear, ego, or social calculation. Your energy is no longer consumed by defending the mask, but by fully realizing the project. This unburdened efficiency allows you to create more, risk more, and achieve more profound results than those still trapped in the psychological accounting of conformity. The external punishment you receive is merely the price of maintaining this superior efficiency. You pay the price of social friction to claim the infinite reward of unconditional creative output. The ultimate purpose of this philosophical journey is not merely to understand freedom, but to fully inhabit it. This final act requires you to realize that you are fundamentally whole and complete, regardless of the arbitrary social roles or labels the collective attempts to impose upon you. This is the truth that fuels unconditional motivation. You must choose your identity. 1. The fragmented self, the social role. An identity built on the unstable approval of the crowd, constantly defended and destined to collapse the moment the circumstances change. 2. The unconditional self, the true you. An identity built on the spontaneous flowing energy of the universe, unassailable by external criticism and requiring no defense. The only way to sustain this freedom is through relentless presence. Your motivation shifts from frantically getting somewhere to simply being fully here. 1. Embrace the spontaneity of the true self, Wu Wei. Your action should no longer be a calculated, energy-draining response to external pressure, but a fluid, effortless expression of your internal truth. When you act without fear of judgment, your actions become infinitely more effective and beautiful. This is the difference between a strained performance and a joyful dance. 2. Accept the price of uniqueness. The resentment you receive from the unfree is the final necessary confirmation of your liberty. Their criticism is merely the sound of their own psychological chains rattling. Do not internalize their noise. Treat their judgment as irrelevant data. It confirms their state of mind, not your reality. 3. Choose presence. Overpromise. Stop living for the approval of the future or the applause of the crowd. Your full, unburdened presence in the now is the ultimate act of defiance against the anxious social system. Your quiet joy is the revolution. Do not negotiate your inner peace for external approval. The truly motivated life is one lived without apology, driven by an internal current that is too powerful to be stopped by the anxiety of the crowd. Pay the price of solitude and claim the infinite wealth of your spontaneous self.